The heavy scent of lilies used to be my favorite smell because it reminded me of my late wife. But standing there in the front row of the cathedral, it felt like it was choking me. My daughter, Claire, looked like an angel in white lace, walking down that aisle toward a man I had spent the last 6 months trying to like. When she reached the altar, she paused. Her eyes locked onto mine with a look that didn't belong on a bride. It wasn't joy, it was pure, cold terror. As she adjusted her bouquet, she leaned toward me for just a second and pressed a small, crumpled piece of paper into my palm. I felt the sweat on her hand before she pulled away. I waited until the priest began the opening prayer before looking down. In messy, frantic handwriting, it said, "Dad, help me. He knows about the account. Please don't let me marry him. If you want to see how a father tears down a monster to save his only child, make sure you hit that subscribe button and stick around, because the story of how we got to this altar is darker than I ever imagined." I'm a simple man. I spent 30 years working as a forensic accountant, a job that mostly involved staring at numbers until they confessed their secrets. When I retired, I moved to the edge of the city onto a piece of land that has been in my family for 3 generations. 50 acres of prime real estate developers have been sniffing around for years. I live modestly, fixing old clocks and enjoying the silence, but I know exactly what that land is worth. Claire is my whole world. After her mother passed, it was just the two of us. She's smart, kind, and maybe a little too trusting. When she brought Mark home for the first time, I wanted to be happy for her. He was charming, well-dressed, and worked in high-end real estate. He had a way of making you feel like the most important person in the room. But there was something in his eyes that didn't match his smile, a stillness, a calculating look I'd seen before in men who moved money for the wrong reasons. At first, the red flags were small. Over dinner, Mark would casually ask about property taxes or whether I'd considered putting the land into a trust for Claire. He framed it as concern for our family's future, but he asked too often. One night, while Claire was in the kitchen, Mark told me about a development project. He said my land was the missing piece for a luxury shopping complex and claimed I could walk away with $10 million if I signed a few papers. I told him the land wasn't for sale. The smile stayed, but his jaw tightened so hard I thought a tooth might crack. That was the first time I saw the mask slip. I didn't tell Claire. I didn't want to be the overprotective father who ruined her happiness over a gut feeling. Instead, I did what I do best. I followed the numbers. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. Mark wasn't successful, he was drowning. 3 shell LLCs, shuffled debt, unpaid obligations to people who don't send polite reminders. My land was his exit strategy. But money wasn't the worst part. I noticed how he treated Claire when he thought no one was watching. He didn't yell. He gaslit her, telling her she misremembered things, subtly criticizing her until she doubted her own mind. My confident daughter became quiet, withdrawn, and nervous every time her phone buzzed. I knew I had to act, but carefully. If I moved too soon, I'd push her straight into his arms. I needed proof she couldn't ignore. In the weeks before the wedding, I played the doting father-in-law. I even told Mark I was considering selling the land. Greed makes people sloppy. That's when I found it. He had opened a joint account in Claire's name without her knowledge, using a forged signature. He was funneling his debts into her credit history. And the prenuptial agreement he convinced her to sign? Buried inside was a clause granting him power of attorney if she was deemed mentally unfit. It was a trap. He wasn't marrying her, he was acquiring her. 3 days before the wedding, I found the final piece. A former partner of Mark's, another woman he'd destroyed, gave me her records. He was a predator. He targeted women with assets, married them, drained them, and disappeared. I could have gone to the police, but the wedding was 72 hours away. And I knew Claire needed to see the truth herself. So I waited. The morning of the wedding was heavy and gray. In her dressing room, Claire was pale, shaking. Mark's mother hovered nearby, watching her like a guard. I whispered that I loved her no matter what. She gripped my arm just a second too long. At the altar, Mark stood smug, already counting his winnings. Claire trembled beside him. That's when she handed me the note. She knew. When the priest asked if anyone objected, I stood. The church froze. Mark tried to laugh it off. I walked to the altar, plugged my phone into the sound system, and hit play. His own voice echoed through the cathedral, bragging about controlling Claire, selling the land, and manipulating her mental health. Then I handed out the documents. The lies collapsed. Mark ran. The sheriff was waiting. That night, Claire came home with me. For weeks, we barely spoke. We just sat on the porch watching sunsets until the weight lifted. We fixed her credit. Closed the accounts. Reclaimed her life. Mark took a plea deal. The land is still quiet. Still ours. Being a father isn't just about providing. It's about watching the shadows while your child looks at the light. Knowing when to stay quiet, and when to burn everything down. The lilies still bloom in our garden. They don't smell like a funeral anymore. They smell like a new beginning. If you ever feel something is wrong, trust your gut. The people who love you will always catch the note you pass them, no matter how late it feels. And if you want to hear more stories where justice is served, check out the next video on your screen.